See, yeah, now you're stuck with me again. Sorry about that. So we're going to be talking a little bit about CDI stuff, about strategy, and about benchmarking, which is kind of fun. Let me see if I can share my screen again. I have a camera blocking a lot of stuff, so it usually takes a few minutes to find the right thing. Let's see. Yes, that should work. Boom. Yeah. Now you see me and you see slides. That is wonderful. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about benchmarking and some of the things that we've been doing there. And it'll take about 20 minutes. And then we're going to have a nice little break. Everybody can stretch their legs, get a cup of coffee, or maybe go to bed. Or maybe if you're in Australia, just have a beer. It's up to you, depending on where you are. This is the beginning. We're live for about 90 minutes now, but we're going to go all the way through midnight. So we have about 13 more hours to go. Isn't that fun? And we're spending most of our day talking about conversational AI. And overall, what we see companies trying to do, on one hand, they have, automation goals. We see hyper automation being something that is on the top of everybody's agenda. We want to automate stuff that allows us to reduce costs, to remove friction from journeys that we might have. So we have automation goals and we have customer experience goals. Everybody wants, happy customers, brand ambassadors, people that tell their friends, that tell their friends, that tell their friends. So conversational AI is very powerful in this regard because it allows us to unify automation goals and customer experience goals when you do it well, right? And that's kind of the tricky part in conversational AI. That's the promise. But what we see a lot of companies do is like they build a lot of scope, right? We build integrations, we put all these journeys in there, but we don't really focus on the customer experience enough. So we have all this stuff, we have all of these investments, but we have no adoption on these systems, and we're kind of wasting a lot of money. And then on the other side of the spectrum, we have companies that create novelty experiences, maybe on a smart speaker. Well, we created some cool things, we invested in it. A lot of times it's a POC, so it doesn't necessarily break the bank yet, but they're novelty experiences. So you want to have a good balance between scope and experience. And if you've seen me before, you've heard me say that, the more conversations you have, the better they should be. So as you gradually start adding to scope, you want to gradually start investing more in the customer experience. So if we now kind of look at where the industry is, we see a lot of it on this side of the spectrum, right? Where we call this the discovery phase. We see a lot of banks, that they're adding to scope. We've got some fundamentals in our design patterns, but we don't have, the best of the best yet, right? We don't really know how to design for trust yet. We don't really know how to design for a very good customer experience. Overall, we see, telcos being a bit further down the line. I think it also has to do with, a lot of them being more mature around phones in general, right? And apps and SMS. It's closer to the core business. So we see a lot of stuff that's just a little more integrated. It's a little more advanced. But this is kind of what you see the entire industry be, right? We're building scope. We're starting to invest in the customer experience, but we're not always on track. And we kind of seem to be at that pivotal point. If we start recognizing this now, then we can actually improve the experience and get back on track to the promised land of conversational AI, to that top right corner where we have a lot of scope and a great customer experience. All right. Because if you look at these 4 quadrants, usually how it starts, in the second quadrant, that's where people start, and we start discovering stuff, right? We're on the right path. We have a good balance between scope and the experience. So we're kind of on track to unlock that potential. And you see a lot of companies starting out with it. It's a small team, they're all very focused on doing a good job. And a lot of times then what happens is that, they see the promise, they see the value, so they start over investing immediately. They start doubling down. They want more scope, more integration. Let's start building stuff. And they actually end up in the third quadrant called squandering, where you've built so much, but you're not getting a lot of value. So your ROI is really poor. So we see that happen a lot, as you saw in the second chart. So what we like to do then is, get them back to that leading edge in the first quadrant where you have hyper automation with a great customer experience. But a lot of companies, I think, if you're in the audience, you'll kind of recognize that, you start out in the second quadrant, you almost end up in the third. It's very dangerous. And I know some of you have ended up there. And then how do you go back on track to that leading corner? So the way to think about AI assistants is we all have, that dream of, like the movie Her, fully integrated, contextual, knows everything about anyone, right? Almost like OpenAI, right? OpenAI, you can ask it any question, and this would be within the context of your own business, and it can just help and do these things. Now, that is the highest level in a way, right? It is very mature. But the problem is, and it's the same with people in a way, right? We all eventually become adults or maybe even senior citizens, but we can't just be that tomorrow or the day after. We just have to grow into it. We have to go through that phase. We start out as little babies with nothing but potential, and then we become toddlers and become teenagers, and slowly we mature. And it's the same for AI assistants. If you look at these different altitudes of development, so they start out, harmless and kind, nothing but potential. And this AI assistant wants to grow so that it can help other people grow. It wants to be able to do more so that it can actually help customers better, or patients or employees, whatever it is. And then as you kind of go to that next level, starting to develop your own personality, start to understand things more, can answer a bunch of questions, and can sometimes already do a few things, right? So there's some tone of voice that we start to developing. We have a few integrated journeys. We can answer a bunch of questions. And that's for a lot of companies where you are today, right? You just have a good chatbot, and that's pretty cool. But then you're looking to do this. Every day you're getting smarter. I can help people with lots of stuff because I can look up information. I enjoy talking to people, and I know how to keep them engaged, and I make it easy for them to accomplish their goals, right? So we want to be that fun AI assistant that people like to check in with, that can keep a conversation going. So we kind of develop from, 1-2 turn journeys to multi-turn journeys that are more integrated, right? And our next step, you become more integrated as a being, like we are as adults. So you start develop relationships with people. You become more integrated. You start to recognize people. Instead of being maybe on one channel or maybe two, you're active on lots of different channels. So this AI assistant that started out as a chatbot on a website is now in the app, becomes part. You can access it via WhatsApp or via the IVR. You're active on more channels. You have more integrations. And the chatbot gets a team of people that help it perform to the best of its ability. And then eventually we're delightful. We can help with almost everything and do everything. And people reach out to that AI assistant first because they know it will get the job done. And if you look at ChatGPT, all of a sudden overnight, we know that will get the job done. And it's very impressive. So they started here. When they launched, behind the scenes, of course, they had to go through different steps. This is kind of the journey, what everybody's trying to do, right? And you see these different levels here on this chart. So the more conversations you have, the better they should be. As you start adding to scope, you start adding more design patterns to the experience to create a richer experience so that you can help people better. So how do you develop scope, right? And because, use cases in a way are drivers of scope. And this is taxonomy that I designed. Very happy with that. Our designer hates me for it, but I like it. But right, AI assistants, the way we see them at CDI is you've got your core AI assistant, and there are a few business goals that you tend to have with them. You want to reduce costs, you want to grow revenue, you want to increase productivity, or you want to grow your reputation, right? Because it's also a brand thing. So all of these AI assistants have, at least one of these business goals when when you start adding that to scope. So for every use case that you add, it contributes to one of those four things. And then these AIs, they can be external when they talk to our customers, our users, our patients. It can be anything, right? Um, then we have two types of use cases. On one hand, we have existing conversations that we want to automate. So these could be, current conversations that I have with my patients, or conversations that we have via customer support, or maybe the HR department is answering a whole bunch of questions. So these are existing conversations that I can start automating. But there are also lots of journeys where there's friction. Oh, now I hear myself again. Did you change something, Olaf? Hmm, that's interesting because I know I hear myself with a 10-second delay. Let me see. And I think I'm still audible, right? Can I get a thumbs up from Olaf? Because I think this is working. Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Um, so then we have our possible conversations. So these are journeys with friction. And so people might be on your website and they're trying to find something and it's quite difficult. They got to click through a whole bunch of stuff. So instead of doing that, and then through the website. Thanks, Steve, for giving the heads up. Yeah, so the sound for you is great. I hear myself 10 times, but I think it's okay now. So we have these friction journeys that we could use conversational interfaces to actually deal with that and make that easier. And all of these conversations, they take place on chat channels or in voice channels. And then there are the channels kind of on both spectrums that I own. So for chat channels, it might be my own website or my own app, but there's also WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or Google Business Messenger that I don't own, that are third-party things, but I can have conversations there. And the same goes for voice, whether it's a smart speaker or my own IVR system. When people ring me up on the phone, then I actually hear or I can help them there as well. So if you think about every use case kind of that you see companies do, you can kind of find them here in this taxonomy. Whether they reduce cost and then they external talk to customers, in customer support of questions that we're already having via a chat channel. So every use case you can kind of find here and play around with. So these are all contributing to scope. But then how do you develop the experience, right? Because per level, we also kind of see different design patterns that you should be implementing. So when you're starting out, you just want to have a functional AI assistant. You focus on designing for function. So you have your founding value lock-in. So you want to say, I want to be inclusive and human-centric, and it needs to be empathy, and it needs to be goal-driven. We really want to help people. So before you design anything, you think about that. So who do you want to have on the team? You want to make sure there's diversity there, that you can be inclusive, that you have the right people there. And then you start designing for function. And here's your acknowledgement, your confirmation, your prompts. And we're going to talk about the design patterns in a different talk, and talk a little bit about the skill set that you need. But then as conversations become more integrated and more personalized, we need to start designing for trust. And that comes from, persona, tone of voice. We want to have explainability around the things that we do. We want to have accountability in there. And then as we start designing for behavior, because we can do more and more and more, we start thinking about behavior design and later on delight. So there are different design patterns that I start adding at different levels of maturity for my AI assistant project. So how do we then check that at CDI, right? So we have a lot of companies that come to us and they ask us, like, can you do an analysis of the assistant that we have here? And we love to do that. And there are two ways for us to actually do that. So part of it is actually interviewing the stakeholders and get a good feeling of feel for what that operation looks like. Now, what are the metrics that you're tracking? What does the budgeting look like? How many people are working on this? What kind of technology do you have? Do you have everything that you need to deliver on what you're trying to do? a certain number of use cases with certain experience. And then for these design patterns, we use this little tool and we put the text in and it gives us feedback on these design patterns, right? So it's a language API that we've created and we use it internally to benchmark your prompts against these proven design patterns, and it gives us a score. So this one's not so good. And then you see here, if we rewrite that, we get a higher score. And that allows us to put people on that chart of where they sit in this framework. So what's interesting now is like if we can position people on that chart of scope and experience, and we could say this is kind of where you are, the next step is to understand how they got there in the first place. Because that's obviously, it's great to have a map and say, okay, this is where you are, but now how do I get to my destination? And that's what we use our integral strategy framework for. And we look at 4 different things in a way, right? It's mindset. So how do the individuals on your team, how do they perceive the work? Then there's the skill set. To what extent are they capable of actually delivering on that work? Because if you need to start designing for trust to get to the next level of your AI assistant, that comes with very specific skill sets. All of a sudden, you need personality. You need someone for personality. You need someone for tone of voice that is going to really be the editor in chief, right? And if you go one level up, all of a sudden you need the skill set for behavior design. When your corpus grows, so you need better AI trainers, etc., as well to deal with more competing intents, etc. If you just have 10 use cases, AI training, sure, it's very important that you need to do it well, but that's a whole different game. When you have 100 intents, it's a whole different game. So you need to start developing that skill set. And the culture is the environment and the strategy with which people do this work. Right? Because you can have an amazing team. People are excited about it. They love doing this stuff. They have the skill set. But you put them in an environment where the culture doesn't really care about conversational AI. There's not, there's no ambassadors in the organization. Then you're going to have a problem there. Right? So culture is incredibly important. The environment in which people do this work. And then the systems, these are the technologies and the organizational structures that you need to deliver on this. Because you can have an amazing team, but if they don't have the right technology, then they can't do it either. Or maybe you have a great team of writers, but you have open source technology that requires a more technical team to deliver on it, then there's a mismatch as well. All right, so we always want to look at these 4 quadrants to create an integral strategy of how to move an organization forward. And what's kind of neat is that per level, you can kind of describe what it should look like, right? Because if you're starting out with your first innovation project where maybe you create a little chatbot, what you need is really, an innovator, a small team that just hacks it together with, not the most advanced technology, but just build out a proof of concept. That's a completely different setup than when I have an enterprise team of 50 people with all the governance and all the stakeholders and all the advanced technology that I need for that as well. So as I move up these levels of maturity for my AI assistant, all these 4 quadrants develop as well. Because initially the mindset might be to be eager and trying stuff out and being true cowboys of the organization. As I'm doing 1 million conversations a day in a big team, I actually want people with a more conservative mindset, to have a greater sense of responsibility rather than just going out there and breaking things. All right. So what you see here, for example, if we do an analysis, we can kind of map you out here. And you see this a lot. If we say, how do people end up in that quadrant where they're squandering some of their budgets because they've overbuilt scope? It happens a lot that, organizations, they want to validate the AI assistant. Do we think we have a business case here? Do we think that this can actually make us a lot of money in the future? They validate that, and then they say, yes, this is going to work. And what they do then is they bring the big budget, they start building a big team, they start bringing in all this technology, but they skip all of these steps, right? Because the people working there, they need to grow into that new role. They need to develop the skill set to go there, and that just takes time, right? So you can't tell a child like tomorrow you're an adult and I'm going to treat you differently. It takes time. And we see a lot of organizations kind of struggle there. And what happens then in a culture where everybody's excited about it, it's going to take a while for them to kind of catch up on that, right? It's going to take a while for that organization to develop conversational culture. And because they're not getting the results, you see that culture crumble, right? So all of a sudden, stakeholders think, maybe there's a new technology. Maybe I want to focus on that. So this allows us to kind of look at your operation and say, we think that this is going on based on what you're doing, based on what the environment looks like. This is where you stand. And then we can give very clear recommendations on what you should do next. A lot of times, and that's our bread and butter, it's, develop the skill set and do that well. But also around mindset, find a different type of personality that your organization would benefit from. And we're going to talk to Stefan van Tulder in a later session about the personality of the people working in conversational AI. That's all focused on the quadrant of mindset. So yeah, the more conversations you have, the better they should be. Scope plus experience equals value. So if we look at our taxonomy, that's how we understand how we can drive scope, right? And the systems that we need to drive scope. If we look at the customer experience or the user experience in general, we know that we can start adding more design patterns to understand how to get there. But the important thing is that we need to work on all these 4 quadrants at the same time to do very well, right? And that's kind of the cool thing about this. Yay, I did it on 20 minutes. And what's cool, I always add these slides because then I'm like, if I have a lot of time left, I can go over my checklist here. But no, we don't really have to do that. So I did it on 20 minutes. But if there's any questions in the chat, let's have a look at that real quick. So what is the bot design pattern scoring tool? Let's see, Darren, our good friend Darren asked that. Great guy from the UK. That is something that we've developed in-house that we're looking that we're using now. It might be something that we make available to others as well. Thank you, Cobus. That means a lot from you. I appreciate that very much. Is there anything else? No, not many questions. That is very good. So what we're going to do now is actually take a little bit of a break. Everybody kind of take 5 minutes, stretch your legs. Then we're going to come back in. And then we are being joined by Ultimate AI. Ultimate AI, I'm a big fan of Ultimate AI. What I really like about it is that, some of these companies in conversational AI, they really come from the conversational AI space, and then they try to go and, CX as a broader topic. And Ultimate really started there and now goes more into this conversational AI community, which is kind of neat. It's a great product. It's a very well-funded company. They have big customers. They're operating from Berlin. Nice office, good people. And we're going to learn a little bit about, how to build delightful conversational flows. So let's all take a little bit of a break, stretch your legs. We're going to make a new pot of coffee. And I also got to figure out what to do with the audio, because sometimes I hear myself like a whole bunch of times in a row, which is frustrating. So thank you, and we will be right back. Let's see. And one quick note here, everybody. So we discovered that the people's area wasn't on yet, but we just switched it on and we kept the whole system alive. So you can connect with people, makes it easier. Also, all of our partners, they have booths. So go check that out. It's kind of neat. You can get white papers. There's a lot of times there's videos. You can just check in with people. So please make use of those things. And, you'll probably walk away with a few new friends today.